What's up, guys? This is Chris from DraftDashboard.com. Here are my DFS picks for NBA Sunday, May 2nd. These picks apply for DraftKings and FanDuel. Before I get started, please drop a like on this video and hit that red subscribe button and hit that bell icon so you don't miss our new videos. In this video, I'm going to go over my top picks for today's NBA slate. And if you stick around to the very end of this video, we'll use the Draft Dashboard tools to make a DFS lineup using the picks we just made. Okay guys, we have a 7-game slate tonight, so let's take a look at the point guard position. I'm going to give you a value play here. It's a risky play, but I got a feeling about this guy. It's a great matchup, so I like Elfrid Payton from the New York Knicks playing the Houston Rockets, who have the 3rd worst defense overall, and they give up the 4th most fantasy points to opposing point guards. Elfrid Payton has averaged 21.7 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 25 minutes per game with a 24% usage rate. He scored 17, 19, and 5 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 21, 14, and 14 minutes. He's projected at 18.3 fantasy points here tonight. That's 5.2 times value. He's only $3,500 FanDuel salary, and he's $200 less on DraftKings. So I like the fact that he played 21 minutes last game. I think he can hit value no problem if he can play 20 minutes or more. And Vegas thinks there's going to be 216.5 points scored in this game. And I like this pick because he scored 24, 23, and 19 fantasy points in his last 3 games versus the Rockets. It's a fantastic matchup. So I like Elfrid Payton here versus the Houston Rockets. Okay, another point guard that I like is Delon Wright from the Sacramento Kings playing the Dallas Mavericks, who have a good defense overall. They've been good versus opposing point guards, but Delon Wright has averaged 25.2 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 27 minutes per game with a 16% usage rate. He scored 33, 17, and 14 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 26, 26, and 21 minutes. Now he's projected at 23.5 fantasy points here tonight, but I think he can score 27 fantasy points in this one and get you 5 times value or more. He's $5,400 FanDuel salary, and he's $400 less on DraftKings. So I like this pick because he scored 14, 30, 56, 65, and 14 fantasy points in his last 5 games versus the Mavericks. And Vegas thinks there's going to be 228.5 points scored in this game. So I like Delon Wright here versus the Dallas Mavericks. Okay, let's take a look at the shooting guard position. I like CJ McCollum from the Portland Trailblazers playing the Boston Celtics, who have a good defense overall, and they've been pretty good versus opposing shooting guards, but CJ McCollum has averaged 37.9 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 34 minutes per game with a 27% usage rate. He scored 15, 42, and 30 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 32, 34, and 24 minutes. He's projected at 37.8 fantasy points here tonight. That's 5 times value. He's $7,500 FanDuel salary, and he's $600 more on DraftKings. So I like that FanDuel price. Now he scored 35, 41, and 52 fantasy points in his last 3 games versus the Celtics. And Vegas thinks there's going to be 231.5 points scored in this game. So I like CJ McCollum here versus the Boston Celtics. Before I continue with the picks, I'm excited today because we added a new contest for everyone watching. If you want to enter the drawing for $100 PayPal, all you need to do is like this video, hit that subscribe button, and make a quick comment below to be entered into the drawing. We'll reply to a random comment and let you know that you won, and then we'll send you $100 PayPal. So it's that easy, and we pick a new winner every Saturday and announce them in our video. So get your comment in now so I can add another entry for you. Now guys, just as a quick note, we just released a free DFS contest on Draft Dashboard for MLB and NBA for DraftKings and FanDuel. There's over $500 available in the prize pool, and this is a totally free contest you can enter as a Draft Dashboard member. So make sure to click the link in the description of this video, give Draft Dashboard a try, and you can start playing in our free DFS contest and compete to win some money. Another shooting guard that I like is Marcus Smart from the Boston Celtics playing the Portland Trailblazers, who have the 9th worst defense overall, and they give up the 5th most fantasy points to opposing shooting guards. Marcus Smart has averaged 30.3 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 33 minutes per game with a 19% usage rate. He scored 39 and 35 fantasy points in the last 2 games, playing 43 and 37 minutes. He's projected at 31.4 fantasy points here tonight, but I think he can score 34 fantasy points or more, get you 5 times value or more. He's $6,700 FanDuel salary, and he's $300 less on DraftKings. He scored 35, 28, 32, and 33 fantasy points in his last 4 games versus the Trailblazers. We know Vegas thinks there's going to be 231.5 points scored in this game. It's a fast-paced game and a great matchup, so I like Marcus Smart here versus the Portland Trailblazers. Okay, let's take a look at the small forward position. I'm going to give you a risky value play here, tournament play only, but I like Cameron Johnson from the Phoenix Suns playing the Oklahoma City Thunder, who have the absolute worst defense overall, and they give up the absolute most fantasy points to opposing small forwards. Cameron Johnson has averaged 17.7 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 24 minutes per game with a 17% usage rate. He scored 15, 11, and 16 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 26, 28, and 30 minutes. So he's playing plenty of minutes. He just needs a little bit more production, and he's projected at 20.1 fantasy points here tonight. That's 5.7 times value. He's $3,500 FanDuel salary, and he's $600 more on DraftKings. He scored 27, 19, and 32 fantasy points in his last 3 games versus the OKC, and Vegas thinks there's going to be 225 points scored in this game. Fantastic matchup, so I like Cameron Johnson here versus the Oklahoma City Thunder. Another small forward that I like is RJ Barrett from the New York Knicks playing the Houston Rockets, who have the 2nd worst defense overall, and they give up the 2nd most fantasy points to opposing small forwards. RJ Barrett has averaged 30 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 35 minutes per game with a 24% usage rate. He scored 46, 24, and 43 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 41, 45, and 38 minutes. So he's playing monster minutes, and he's projected at 32.7 fantasy points here tonight. That's 5 times value. He's $6,500 FanDuel salary and the same price on DraftKings. He scored 17, 41, and 31 fantasy points in his last 3 games versus the Rockets. Vegas thinks there's going to be 216.5 points scored in this game, so I like RJ Barrett here versus the Houston Rockets. Okay, let's take a look at the power forward position. I like Robert Covington from the Portland Trailblazers playing the Boston Celtics, who have a good defense overall, and they're middle of the pack defending opposing power forwards. Robert Covington has averaged 26.2 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 32 minutes per game with a 12% usage rate. He scored 21, 17, and 36 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 31, 32, and 29 minutes. He's projected at 27.1 fantasy points here tonight. That's 5.5 times value. He's 4,900 FanDuel salary and 200 more on DraftKings. I like this pick because he scored 30, 44, 44, and 39 fantasy points in his last 4 games versus the Celtics. We know Vegas thinks this is going to be a high-scoring game. 231.5 points scored in this game. So I like Robert Covington here versus the Boston Celtics. Okay, now I know I've given you a lot of players from this game, but I think it's a good game to stack. So I like Jason Tatum from the Boston Celtics playing the Portland Trailblazers, who have the 9th worst defense overall, and they're middle of the pack defending opposing power forwards. Jason Tatum has averaged 44 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 36 minutes per game with a 31% usage rate. He scored 80 and 57 fantasy points in the last 2 games, playing 45 and 40 minutes. So he's playing monster minutes, and I think he can score 50 fantasy points or more here and get you 5 times value or more. He's 10,100 FanDuel salary, and he's 200 less on DraftKings. I like this pick because he scored 53, 58, 48, 18, and 42 fantasy points in his last 5 games versus the Trailblazers. We know Vegas thinks this is going to be a high-scoring game. 231.5 points scored in this game. Plenty of fantasy points to go around. Think it's a great game to stack. So I like Jason Tatum here versus the Portland Trailblazers.
Real quick, guys, I got great news. For a limited time, we're offering a full 30-day trial to Draft Dashboard. You can try all of our DFS tools for all sports. You can try the Position Optimizer, where you can see the top players ranked for each position. And we added a new Player Trends tool, where you can see the top salary differences between FanDuel and DraftKings. It's a really good tool to help you pick out value for the site that you're playing on.
Oh, and if you're tired of doing research every day, we just added a cheat sheet that shows hand-picked plays for the slate. No confusing stat lines, no headaches, just a simple cheat sheet that shows the absolute best players for your lineups. Okay, moving on to the center position. Once again, I like Andre Drummond from the LA Lakers playing the Toronto Raptors, who have a middle-of-the-pack defense overall. And although they've been pretty good versus opposing centers, Andre Drummond has averaged 39.1 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 28 minutes per game with a 29% usage rate. He scored 29, 37, and 35 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 24, 20, and 25 minutes. So those minutes have come down. They're a bit concerning. You want him to play at least 24 to 25 minutes here. If he plays 20 minutes or under, probably going to be hard for him to hit value, but he is a point per minute monster, so he's got a good chance at hitting value no matter how many minutes he plays, as long as it's over 20. But he is projected at 38 fantasy points here tonight. That's 5.3 times value. He's 7,100 FanDuel salary, and he's 200 more on DraftKings. He scored 44, 52, and 50 fantasy points in his last 3 games versus the Raptors. Vegas thinks there's going to be 219.5 points scored in this game. This is probably going to be a tournament play for me only, because chances are he only plays 20 to 22 minutes and maybe just hits value or even comes under value a little bit. But he has a good chance of playing 25 minutes or more and crushing value, and you might get him at somewhat low ownership because his minutes have been down. So I like Andre Drummond here versus the Toronto Raptors. Okay, another center that I like is Richaun Holmes from the Sacramento Kings playing the Dallas Mavericks, who have a good defense overall, and they're middle of the pack defending opposing centers. Richaun Holmes has averaged 32.7 fantasy points per game on the season,
playing an average of 30 minutes per game with a 17% usage rate. He scored 38, 19, and 35 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 30, 22, and 25 minutes. He's projected at 30.2 fantasy points here tonight, but I think he can score 35 fantasy points or more, get you 5 times value or more. He's $6,900 FanDuel salary, and he's $400 less on DraftKings. So I prefer that DraftKings price. He scored 35 fantasy points in his last game versus the Mavericks, and Vegas thinks there's going to be 228.5 points scored in this game. So I like Richaun Holmes here versus the Dallas Mavericks. Okay, now I just caught this play out of the corner of my eye, and I think he makes a really nice DraftKings value play. I like Nerlens Noel from the New York Knicks playing the Houston Rockets, who have the second worst defense overall, and they give up the 3rd most fantasy points to opposing centers. Nerlens Noel has averaged 22.9 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 24 minutes per game with a 10% usage rate. But take a look at his last 3 games. He scored 49, 14, and 27 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 29, 28, and 29 minutes. So his minutes per game are up, and he had a huge game last game, and he's projected at 25.7 fantasy points here tonight. And even on FanDuel, that's 5 times value. He's $5,100 FanDuel salary, and he's $500 less on DraftKings. So I love that DraftKings price. He scored 25 fantasy points in his last game versus the Rockets. Vegas thinks there's going to be 216.5 points scored in this game. It's a great matchup. So I like Nerlens Noel, especially on DraftKings here versus the Houston Rockets.
If you want to try all these daily fantasy tools for yourself, click the link in the description below this video or just go to draftdashboard.com. You can use our DFS lineup optimizer to build quality lineups using our picks and your own custom player pool. Click the link in the description below this video and try all these daily fantasy tools right now. Thanks so much for watching. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel and hit that bell icon so you can get instant updates whenever we post a new video.
Thank you so much for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, please smickety smash that like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Oh, and please comment below with your favorite player for this NBA slate. I love to hear what you guys have to think. Thanks again, and good luck.